Hello everyone and welcome to the CEMS webinar series, episode 23 today. And the topic of today is the remote onboarding experience. And with us today is Aneta Kosinska. And she graduated from CEMS in 2019. And she's currently based in Canada, where she works as an organizational change management consultant. Last year, she already introduced her flywheel, Remote Work Flywheel, in another episode of the CEMS webinar series. And she's here today to follow up on that and to give us more insight on the onboarding experience and on individual well-being. Before I give the word to Aneta, please keep in mind that you're muted upon arrival and that you can use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen to ask any questions that you have, or you can also use the chat. Also in the Q&A box, you can upvote any questions so that we can come back to them quicker and give them priority. You do not have to wait until the end, until the Q&A session. You can just ask your questions whenever you want. And then we can interrupt Aneta and she can ask and answer them directly. So yeah, without any further ado, I will give the screen to Aneta and wish you all best of luck.
So hi everyone. Thank you for joining today's seminar or webinar. For anyone who's joining bright and early from Toronto, which is where I am right now, it's 8 a.m. Good morning. And then anyone who's joining from Europe, good afternoon. Wherever you are in the world, it's nice to have you again, and it's nice to be around some CEMS students, CEMS corporate partners, CEMS recent alumni. It's always a good time when we get together and chat, whether it's about informal topics or formal ones like we have today. So big thank you for joining. And then a big thank you to Melissa and Jerome for helping me organize this and put things together, as well as Nelly, who's the one who promoted this idea. Okay, so without further ado, I see that some people in the participant list are new joiners, as well as some people are coming in because they were inspired by the first Remote Work Flywheel, Remote Work at a Glance webinar. So yeah, basically for those of you that haven't been introduced to the Remote Work Flywheel, this is what it is. And the way that I like to think about a Remote Work Flywheel is through literally a flywheel. If you don't know what a flywheel is, it's like this really big, really heavy to lift, like just really hard to push wheel. And basically this wheel has like anchors all around it. And it takes like a force of people to come behind the wheel and to push it forward. And as everyone's, pushing this flywheel forward, trying to get it to move, the anchors through like gravitational pull drop down, and they help encourage the push to take place. So it's a combination of people coming behind the wheel, big push, anchors dropping down, and it spins. And so I like to use this metaphor when I describe remote work, because that's really what it is. When we look at like companies that have transitioned well to remote work or are being innovative in this remote work landscape, we see that they are really utilizing all of the anchors, and they are combining a bunch of great people that work for the organization to help push this remote work and future of workplace forward. So briefly about the anchors of the remote work flywheel, there are 7. So the first one is well-being. Well-being encompasses like work-life balance, what you do to mentally, physically, and emotionally prepare yourself behind the scenes before you enter into work, how best you take care of yourself, and tips and tricks around that. The second piece is about connection. So how do we connect virtually? We've picked up a few techniques over the course of the past year and a half that we've been in this pandemic, but there's always more to learn. The third piece is about meeting culture. So that's about, when do we meet? How often do we meet? And do decisions happen in the meetings, or are they mostly just a period of time where people come together and they just speak about when the decision will be made? So coming to understand how that looks like in each organization is important, especially in a remote work environment. The fourth piece is tools. So what kind of tools, technology, infrastructure exists at the company? And are there more innovative tools that you can bring into the picture in order to get where you want to go a little bit faster? Next up, we have conflict and feedback. So how do we handle conflict when we're working remotely? We can't necessarily go up to the person beside us, our coworker, and say, pull them aside and be like, hey, let's have a quick chat. How do we make sure we're doing that in a way that is beneficial and conducive for everyone? And also, how do we provide feedback, not knowing how they're going to receive it on the other end of their screen? And then we have processes. So processes is all about the way in which work is handed off, anywhere to like employee engagement, performance management, basically like how tasks are taken and how are they given in an efficient way. And then the final and last anchor is place. So that's where do we do work? Is it in an office? Is it at home at our desk? Is it a combination of both? What does that look like? So in the first webinar, we talked about place and connection. So if you're interested in those topics, we'll have a link somewhere, maybe in the chat description. Maybe we'll email it to you a little bit later about those specific topics. But today, we're going to be talking about processes and well-being. So under processes, like I said, there's a few pieces. There's performance management, there's assumption of responsibilities, and workflow and agile teams, big one. And then there's onboarding, which is what we're going to talk about today. And then also in well-being, there's in that bucket, there's career path and strength alignment. So what are your strengths? Are you aligned well in order to provide the company your strengths, or are you needing to kind of pivot and adjust your career in a way that you can highlight your strengths? And then there's individual well-being, which is again what we're going to talk about today. So starting this webinar officially, the intention behind why we're here today, or why I even wanted to do it, I think it's always good to just have an intention before you start something, enter a meeting. So mine today is to talk to corporate partners, our CEMS corporate partners, and just provide them with some tips or maybe some new ideas for how they can go about their remote work onboarding experience and provide, our CEMSies the best experience they possibly can. The second piece is about providing support. So I know that there's a lot of students on this call who are starting their first internship or starting their first job in September. And I remember, going into that first experience being a little bit stressed, not really knowing what to expect. So I just wanted to provide some support in the way that I wish I received it also when I was first starting. So that's also second intention. And then a third intention is for me to share knowledge about remote work. I've been working remotely since, like in a consulting perspective, since 2019, but even before that, since 2017. And I feel like I've seen my ups and downs with remote work. So I just want to make sure I'm constantly sharing with you all and maybe helping you avoid some of the pitfalls that I've fallen into. So today I thought we could, go into, have like an intro for about 10 minutes. So we're good on time for that. We'll talk about onboarding for 25 minutes. We'll briefly chat about well-being and why it's important, especially in the remote working environment. We'll go into questions, but again, as Jerome said, if you have any questions during this talk, feel free to message the chat. Don't be shy, please. And then we'll go into some closing remarks from Jerome. He'll tell us a little bit about CEMS and some of the key offerings that they have. Okay, so starting into it, onboarding. Cool. So first on the agenda is, what is onboarding and why is it even important? So first things first, onboarding is a distinct period of time, and it usually happens at your when you start, like on your first day, and it goes anywhere to 1 week, upwards to anywhere to a month. And onboarding is a really important business practice because it gives you, the new hire, a picture of what the employee experience will be at the new company and what it will be like now and in the future. For our corporate partners listening in on this, in the graph you see on this page, you can see that there's a relationship between economic value and time. So economic value on the left-hand side and time on the bottom. And it's split into investment and return zones. So you can see here in the investment zone, onboarding is part of that investing zone. So that means like onboarding is the time that we invest in our employees through effort and care and time in order to get a proper return on investment in performance as time increases. So a successful onboarding experience leaves candidates feeling welcomed, cared about, engaged, and confident that their choice of employer was the right one. And so ultimately, this means that this is a great opportunity to very transparently showcase your culture, like how things are done around at your organization and any expectations for the new hires going forward. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of research that has gone into onboarding. So from Gallup and Tata Consulting, there's an article that says a positive onboarding experience improves the chances that your hire will stay at your organization beyond the first few weeks by 82%. And a negative onboarding experience makes your new hire 2 times more likely to leave. So we all know that it's very timely, very expensive, very tough to recruit talent. So obviously it's for the betterment of all of us if we, make sure we're thinking through it in a good way and preparing the onboarding experience to the best of our abilities. So, okay, we know what onboarding is, we know why it's important, but why are we talking about it today? So there's been a very big shift in how onboarding has been done before COVID, during COVID, as well as, we're all curious to see how onboarding will be like in the future after COVID. So before COVID, onboarding looked like everybody would go into the office, they would gather around round tables, different speakers would come in and they would present, maybe like a specific presenter from a department would come and present about, what their team does. And then a second one would come in and present what their team does. There will be, opportunities for the new hires to speak with each other, to just get a coffee together, have a bit of small talk, as well as really feel like they're sharing the experience in one room and just building off each other's energy. And then also in the picture above here, there's usually a lot of social hours that happen after the day ends. So there's going out for dinner, going out for maybe drinks, doing a scavenger hunt, for an example. So as you can see, it's a lot about connecting with people in one space. Now moving on to during, what onboarding is like during COVID, it's a little bit more, actually it's not a little, it's definitely a little bit, it's definitely more isolated. So you can see in this picture above, it's, one person staring at a screen, maybe surrounded by a plant. That's the social connection, and there's not too much input happening. So that's like a scenario number one. Scenario number two is they're onboarding at, their living room table with a few other of their friends who are onboarding at their companies at the same time. And this would probably lead to, the roommates or whoever getting closer and really exchanging their experience at your company more intimately than they would if they were all positioned in a room with your other colleagues. So that's during. And then after, so looking forward into the future of the onboarding experience, there seems to be some new expectations. So the situation is obviously different everywhere around the world. So in Canada, where I currently am, we're still very much in lockdown. Restrictions only ease up tomorrow. So we're still pretty much in a pandemic. But I understand that in some places in Europe, some people have even started to go back into the office, and they might even be onboarding in person. So it's very different, but what we do know for sure is that wherever we are in the world, there seems to be some set of new lockdown orders happening every 6 months or so. So the insight or the new expectation for the future of onboarding is around flexibility. So how can we make sure that whatever we're doing, if we're back in lockdown or if we're allowed to be in the office, how do we make sure that our remote onboarding experience is flexible to that? So what does that mean? That means how do we operationalize it and how do we professionalize it so that the experience can be done wherever? And so, yeah, expectation number one is flexibility. And already you can start thinking about ideas like, can we pre-record some videos that otherwise would have been, you know, a session? Or is there ways to put together a list of documents that people can kind of just go through and read on their own time and then come in for the mandatory meetings? Whatever that experience is, flexibility should definitely be top of mind. The second is around purpose. So the pandemic has obviously isolated a lot of people. And with isolation comes more time to think about life. According to a McKinsey study, nearly 2/3 of US employees said that COVID has caused them to reflect on their purpose in life. 2/3 have been reflecting on their purpose of life during this pandemic. And nearly half of those people who participated in that study said that they are reconsidering the kind of work they do because of the pandemic. And then on top of that, more than 70% of people said that they get their sense of purpose from work, which is like crazy to think about, like really big insights. Work is no longer a place where we simply go in and make money and then go and live our lives externally. It's a place we go to get a sense of purpose in life, in a way that almost like our like churches and mosques and however they used to give us purpose in life, and now we're expecting it from our organizations and from our companies. And so yeah, and so I guess like with this big new expectation, there comes, you know, a sense of how do we develop people? How do we make sure that they are, you know, achieving their purpose while they're at our company? And so it's about, you know, how can we individualize their experience, understand their purpose, as well as help them achieve it as if they're like on their journey to self-actualization in this experience. So onboarding is a time for you to really showcase that you are serious about that, because it turns out that also a lot of people onboarding into your company are thinking about that. So that's new expectation number two. And then expectation number three is about the employee experience. So obviously the pandemic has given people the chance to see that work can be done wherever. And so about last year, companies started to think about, okay, if you know, we can do work anywhere, then we have a greater access to global talent, meaning, you know, we can hire a developer from San Francisco, but we can also hire a developer with the same caliber of experience and the same potential from Warsaw. So like what like the opportunities are sort of endless. And then if we flip it to like where we are now, we're starting to see that, you know, the flip side of that is happening. So not only are companies last year, understanding that they have global access to talent, but also talent is now realizing that they have global access to companies. And so what's really stopping them from being paid, for an example, a US salary working for a company in New York, but spending their time in Mexico, living, with less, you don't have to spend as much money, right? And so we start to hear little stories like that, like, okay, I work, my company's in New York, but I'm working from Mexico, or, my company's in Germany, but I'm deciding to go back home to my hometown to work from there. And once people start doing that, they get into like different groups of people that have chosen that specific location, that are usually filled with like the similar lifestyle and similar values and similar ways of wanting to work. And when you do that, people start to talk. And when people start to talk, they talk about where they work and their experiences and how their company is treating them in a way that, for an example, another company is treating them. So employee experience, having a great one and being really thoughtful, and being really cared about is very important. And it's really important to do it right at the beginning. And so I guess with that being said, I really wanted to focus on the employee experience today, so I can provide maybe some like ideas, some things that I've been seeing, some things that, I've learned by talking to people. I've done a bit of research, asking like millennials last year about what worked for them and what they wish had improved in their experience. And so I've added a bit of tips and tricks from there as well. So for the remainder of time we have, I wanted to focus a little bit about strategy, people, processes, and tech. Okay, strategy. So I've split this up into what a corporate partner can do and then what a student and a recent grad can do, to make it a little bit more digestible. So we'll start on the left-hand side, corporate partner. When it comes to strategy, when somebody is onboarding remotely, it's kind of hard to understand outside of, the website and what was given to them during the recruitment process. What is the core strategy of the company, right? So who are the customers? Who are the most important customers? Which industries are the most important to focus on? What are the commercial priorities of the executive team? And so what I've been hearing and what I've been seeing is that there should be some sort of document that provides these types of commercial insights in detail. So people who are participating in the onboarding process can kind of just quickly look at it, study it in a way, digest it, and then understand the bigger picture of the organization, which will then in turn help them understand, how do they provide value to that. So you can do it in like a document version. You can also experiment with perhaps a podcast that they listen to every 2 weeks or something. So there's various ways to do it, but definitely commercial insights is like top of mind when people start their onboarding. They want to know, what are you thinking of achieving? Are you ambitious? And then the second piece is about values and purpose. So values are really hard also to see in a remote work environment. I don't know if you've all experienced that as well. But I think like with remote work, it gets a bit transactional. So it's like passing along work, but you don't really know how all the company comes in together as like a team, and what the values are and what type of values are promoted at the organization. So I was thinking, some interesting ways to showcase your values are appointing like a values warrior. So for an example, your company obviously has a core set of values that are really important to them. So why not, when somebody showcases the value that you deem to be important at your company, why not allocate a certain amount of money to that person so that they can purchase an experience that will further validate and ingrain that value to them. So for an example, this is just top of mind. If your value is like, don't fear fear, and your new employee is showing, you know, that they're showing great courage or something like this, giving them a monetary amount to spend on something like, I don't know, top of mind comes skydiving, maybe that's not the example, but something like that, so that they can, you know, feel like that what they're doing is like validated. And then obviously this is different for where you are in the world. Like this probably wouldn't go over in Europe because of tax reasons. So there's other ways to do it. So say for an example, you have a set of values in your company. The employees take some time to reflect on the company values, and then leadership puts aside a certain amount of monetary funds for values, and then people get to vote on how much or how that money will be spent to further that value. So for an example, if the value is we are builders, there could be like a chat where people come together and they, you know, suggest, if we are truly builders at this company, why don't we show it to our extended community? So why don't we donate a certain amount of money from our values jar, and we donate it to like a non-for-profit that builds houses for people somewhere in a different country. So it's not just, you know, about us, it's also about our extended community and what we can do for others. So that's also another example, and that could probably work in European companies. And then flipping over to the student and grad. So commercial insights, when you get a bigger picture of the organization's like mission, their vision, and their goals, start to think about, like in your onboarding experience, like how can you utilize your strengths and your skills to help move that founder's vision or mission forward. So whether it's like, how can you bring in business to the company, or how can you deliver projects with exceptional quality? And then how can you use your own values in a way that you feel comfortable and you feel like purposeful while you're doing it, to accomplish like the goals that the founder has had in mind. So yeah, study where the company wants to go, and then reflect on yourself, like on your strengths and where you think you can best help out the organization, and then have that conversation with your manager to understand, okay, is this going to be in fact impactful? What does that mean when it comes to results, right? So say for an example, you have like an objective. What are the key results that come after that will help your manager and you understand that you've met that one goal and you're providing value and helping the organization move down the path that it's supposed to be moving down? So that's strategy. The second piece is about process. So for our corporate partners, that means an onboarding progress sheet. So just filling out a quick document, for an example, and having like little check marks on the side with all the onboarding activities that you're expecting your new hire to go through. So this will help them and you see what they are accomplishing, what they still have left to do, as well as gives people a place to ask any questions should they have it. The second piece is about a remote work manual. So again, the rules keep changing. We don't really know specifically what the future of work looks like, but kind of everywhere I've been reading that when people don't know like what the future of work looks like at the company, they start to get nervous. And so to any extent that you can provide some sort of like rules, regulation, best practice insights on how to work remotely, or even like what the future of work would look like, whether that's like an all-encompassing remote work manual, or or even like something you can share in like a town hall meeting, that would also be really helpful. And then the third piece is providing an organizational chart I had to point this out because some of us are starting in startups, where it's, that piece is not commonly provided, but it gives us a lot of great insight. So understanding who's who in the zoo, and understanding like who feeds into who and who manages who and what kind of departments there are and within the business unit line is really helpful to get people off on the right start. And then the fourth piece is about an onboarding liaison or a narrator. So say your onboarding experience takes like a week of time, allocating a point person to kind of create the storyline for the person. So they're probably going to be the first person that they meet in the morning, and then the last person that they meet at the end of the day. Or the first person they meet on the Monday morning and the last person they meet on the Friday afternoon. They're also going to be the voice for any pre-recorded videos. They're also going to be, like the face of anything that revolves around onboarding. They're probably going to be the person that your new hires will go to if they have any questions. So just, creating onboarding as if it's like a story to tell and allocating one narrator to it will make the experience a lot more fluid. And then from a student and a recent grad perspective, as you're going through onboarding, you're probably going to have so many questions. So I'd suggest keeping like a questions document on hand at all times. And you can like add your manager or your teammates or whoever you want to that document. So you can very transparently show them like you have questions, and you are thinking about things and you are curious. And then you can use your initial one-on-ones with your manager to ask those questions. So sometimes, and this is kind of what I did at the beginning when I had my first onboarding, it's like you have so many questions and then you just want to like slack like your manager or something. All the questions at once, but this can get a little overwhelming. So just suggest putting all of your questions on one document, keep a list, and then when you have your weekly one-on-ones or maybe bi-weekly, depending on what the structure is, you can bring all those questions and start going through it in the one-on-one. And just doing it there, it feels a lot more structured and a little bit less overwhelming. And then again, the second piece is an onboarding progress sheet. So similar to what we said with the corporate partners, as you're going through the onboarding sheet and actively checking off those pieces that you need to accomplish by the end of onboarding, highlight like what could have made the day, or what could have made the experience a little bit better. Because if you highlight this, then this could be used to help the next person on board. And that's already a bit of a value add. Maybe you'll be asked to, incorporate some of your best practices to the HR's onboarding experience, or maybe you will be asked to lead a new hire's onboarding. You never know. So just always trying to figure out how, okay, this is good and I'm making my own progress, but how could I help the next person in line that's coming in, who may not have as much insight as I already do. So third part is about people. Looking at it from a corporate partner perspective, executive presence is something that I hear about a lot. Students really want to talk to the founder, whether it's the CEO or the CTO or somebody from the executive team. They just want to have that personalized relationship with them. And sometimes, I think it could be a lot to ask for, but I've seen it happen. Like, for an example, the company that I'm at, the CEO takes 30 minutes with every onboarding group and just talks to them like normally and shares with them their experience about when they first founded the company, as well as he asked people like, who are you? Like, he was really inquisitive about who we were as people, and he really opened the floor for questions, and that went over super well. So that would be a good insight. Second is an intro from HR. Topics like diversity and inclusion, mental health, these types of topics have been like exasperated by the movements that have been happening recently. So like Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter movement. And whenever these, like even like diversity and inclusion at business schools, like whenever these big topics come about, students and new grads, they like congregate and they speak about it openly. And so it's now company leadership responsibility to also bring that to the light. Like, are you a company that promotes that? And how about do you do that? So getting someone from HR to maybe talk about that will go over really well. And even just an intro from HR so that the new hire knows who the point person is will be highly insightful as well. And then, you know, individual identity is really important. Culture is super important. So having like interesting, fun games for people to just be themselves and get to know each other will be really, really important. So I've seen a game called Whose Fridge Is It Anyways? Everybody takes a picture of their fridge, and then at a team meeting, there's like a picture of somebody's fridge goes up, and then there's 3 different people's names that come up on the left-hand side of the screen, and then people kind of have to just guess like whose fridge is it. It sounds really silly, but in a way you do get to know a person a little bit better, and it's just a fun way to like bring some like light and humor into a remote working environment. I've also seen things like company-wide scavenger hunts, as well as, you know, competitive activities like an Olympics game. And then the last piece, the idea is around like daily huddles. So the company that I'm at actually does a really good job doing this as well. So every day at 9 a.m., I'm looking at the time because I want to get to it as well. Every day at 9 a.m., some members from the leadership committee, they come in and they basically just ask people a question, and then they ask them to answer it. So it could be anything from like, what do you do on your work breaks? Or what's the best barbecue you went to? Or what's one thing that you wish you could tell people before you meet them? And so this shows that, you know, the people at the company are interested in getting to know you, which is really important for millennials and Gen Zers. Individual identity and being unique and standing out is very important to them. So finding ways to bring that to light in your culture will also be helpful. And then on the right-hand side, from the student and the recent grad perspective, obviously understand your individual role, understand how your manager sees your role today, how they see your role evolving over time, organizing a heartbeat, which is like organizing a time of the day, of the week that you meet with your manager regularly, and the meeting doesn't get pushed. It's like a solid, no block, nobody can touch this time. So you have like, you can manage your expectations and you can kind of anticipate when you will see them next. As well as organizing a one-on-one structure is super important. So like, what exactly do you want to talk about in your one-on-ones? Your manager will probably ask you like, you lead this one-on-one. You tell me what you want to talk about. Like, this is your time. So just come up with a structure that will help you talk to them in the way that you want to and ask them the questions that you want, but also in a way that you know that they are seeing your development happen as you progress. So getting this started in the onboarding process is like really key. And then the rest of the time is about relationship building. So going around and scheduling coffee chats with people in your immediate team, as well as maybe your extended team, like your department. Maybe make like look at the org chart, make a list of all the people that you want to potentially get to know. And then week by week, talk to them, just book like 20 minutes of a coffee chat and just talk to them and get to know them. Relationship building is so key in the remote working environment. And so, yeah, getting started on that early on will be really helpful. And then the last piece is about finding a culture buddy. So maybe somebody who participated in your interview process that you kind of clicked with. Maybe you can ask them to be your culture buddy, which is a person that you can go to for maybe like advice or questions about how things are done around here. That will be really important as well. And then technology. I see that I don't have too much time, so I'm going to go through this quickly. Technology is basically making sure that people have their equipment, that people understand the technology that your company provides to other clients or to like the outside community. So having a core understanding of the core technology is important. The third piece is designated IT support. So if new hires have questions about like the technology, they can't just jump into somebody's like the IT department's office, right? They have to do this all remotely, right? So maybe designating like one IT person per new hire group, and then just giving them like 1 or 2 hours to spend with that person to get all their questions answered on the first day to make sure they're like well prepared for the rest of the week is thumbs up. And then I would say like at the end of the onboarding, put together a survey to ask them based off of what you've seen from like what type of technology and tools we provide. Is there any other tool that you've worked with in the past that you think would be a value add here? And ask them like, what is the tool? What's the description of the tool? How it would be helpful? And yeah, just seek their insight, because there's so much to learn about new ways of working and new like techniques. Like I've recently been seeing like Canva, which is something that a lot of people are using like on Instagram and stuff, making their way into the corporate environment. And yeah, there's just like really a lot of things to learn from that piece. So generating feedback and questioning what will be useful for them. And then maybe like allocating a certain amount of money to get that indoors would be cool. And then from the student and the recent grad perspective, it's basically just like managing Zoom fatigue or screen fatigue. You're going to be on Zoom for a long time, and you're probably already used to it because you're doing remote work or you're doing remote school. But if you haven't yet like put together a structure for taking breaks, making sure you get up and walk, doing some like eye exercises that, will help you not get a headache at the end of the day, will be really helpful and really important, as well as pre-planning out some like digital detoxes. So like you're not looking at your screen, you're not looking at your phone, maybe putting together like designated times where you change your lighting on your computer. So it's not like blue light, but it's now yellow light to help you calm down a bit. That will be really important. There's a lot of like fatigue happening, and there's a lot of like potential burnout happening in remote work. And so just really make sure you're being proactive with how you're using your technology. And if it's getting too much, like be open about it, which really helps me move to the next point, which is all about well-being. So you've gotten a picture of onboarding, but you should also like adopt some key well-being practices that will help you maintain structure and emotional, mental, physical well-being. And I would strongly advise you start these habits in your onboarding process, because habits take a long amount of time to create. Transitioning from student life into like work life is a bit of a culture shock because the schedules are just a little bit differently. I was talking to one student recently, and they're just saying like usually they do their work like up until like 2 a.m. This might work at your organization if you're like transparent about it, but like switching your schedule and having to get up earlier and it's just like different. So just make sure you're starting your like structured habits during onboarding so you can continue them as you continue your internship or your full-time experience. So when it comes to well-being, I have 2 slides and then I will wrap up, Jerome. I've looked at different onboarding schedules. So on the top left side, you see like that would be a potential schedule for a student or a recent grad. Here you can see there's a lot of green, and green I've color coded to mean connecting. So a lot of time will be spent connecting, and people will want to feel like a part of the team and feel like they're well included on the norms that the team has established before you even got there. So that's one, and like starting at 9 a.m. and ending at 5 p.m. would be like an ideal onboarding schedule. And then if we move our eyes to the right hand side, we see like CEMS mid-year grad perspective. We see a lot more time in the onboarding process allocated to learning. Of course, still some connecting, still some doing, but a lot of it is learning and just understanding like what is this company? What are they trying to accomplish? Do those goals meet my goals? And do I see a fit here long term? And then if we go down to the corporate partner perspective, or like maybe like a senior alumni perspective, you see them connecting a lot and you see them doing a lot. So they usually have like a faster jump into things. Like I've seen, some leadership members on the first in the first week already trying to figure out ways to generate clients. So it's like it's a lot more quick of a start. But they're also spending a lot of time connecting with people and building those relationships and understanding like who's who in the zoo. And so basically what I wanted to share with this slide is like there are various different types of onboarding experiences that work for people. Like even in the bottom, you see, maybe from 9 to 10, the older alumni has to drop kids off at school, and then earlier on in the day, if they have to pick up kids from school. And then on the right-hand side, a mid-year alumni, they really value their exercise. So they always exercise at 3 p.m. And they always do, their like lunch breaks at 1 p.m. Meanwhile, the new hire is a little bit more flexible, but they definitely just want to like meet people and feel included. And so what I'm trying to say here is a big part about well-being is understanding yourself and what you need personally from the onboarding experience. And when you also need to handle your outside commitments. And once you reflect on your needs, then it's fine. Like you can have various different types of schedules, but reflecting on what you need and then openly and honestly sharing that with your manager will be key to having the structure and the schedule that you want. And really you can have the schedule that you want, but you really have to share it with your manager and make a point as to why it makes sense for you. And then hopefully that will be taken into consideration and you will not feel like super stressed. So for an example, if you're not a morning person, but you're expected to start working at 6 a.m. And it's not like a core part of the business, it's just like what the rest of your teammates do, maybe talking to your manager and being like, hey, I actually do most of my best work like later on in the evening. Can I start later? And then vice versa. So just really reflect on like what it is that you need in order to feel at peace and at ease, and then just communicate that. So the last slide that I'll talk about is some well-being best practices. And this is just some structure that I wanted to talk about from this work from home or anywhere manual that I'm building out. Like I said, like your schedule is yours to own, but just having a structure really helps with like stability and a sense of control, especially when you're entering into a new workplace where you don't really know all that stuff and you don't really have a sense of control. So having like a schedule of what you do before you start work. So is it going on a walk? Is it getting like a matcha latte? Is it maybe exercising? Is it, you know, reflecting? Is it doing like making, like having some time to do a prayer, something like that? And then when you start your work, how much time do you allocate to like focus? So there are 3 best practices that you can use. The first one is focusing for 25 minutes and then giving your brain some time to rest for 5 minutes. Second one is focusing for 50 minutes and then letting yourself rest for 10 minutes. And then the third piece is focusing for 90 minutes and then letting yourself rest for 15 minutes. Structuring your like day out like this, it gives you sort of like a goal. So you can like time yourself. And when you're feeling a bit low on motivation, or you're feeling even like a little bit stressed and maybe perhaps a bit anxious, if you have that timer next to you, then you can like understand how long are you doing your best for, and then when you can kind of relax. So I would highly recommend you put those pieces into practice. And then here, find the themes. Find the themes. It's all about understanding, again, like when do you do your best work, and then what type of work do you do your best, what type of work do you do at the best time. So for an example, maybe you're highly social in the afternoon and not so social in the morning. Believe it or not, that's me. And so I would put together like all of my client calls, or I would try to put all my client calls in the afternoon rather than in the morning when my brain isn't working as quickly. So just like finding like when can you, what bucket of time can you use to connect? What bucket of time can you use to learn? What bucket of time can you use to actually do the stuff like analytical work, getting the job done? And then the last piece is all about like after work, like what's your after work schedule? Do you have a stop time that you consistently stop at the end of the day? If not, I would highly suggest you put one into practice, because you can very easily go over. And if you go over too many times, you might feel it on the weekend. And we just want you to be like happy, healthy and safe. So make sure you stop at an appropriate time and take care of yourself. So take care of yourself before work, take care of yourself during work, and then take care of yourself after work. And that's what I got. I know I went over time and I apologize, but I just had a lot to share. So if there's any questions, please let me know. If there's any questions in the chat, or if you also have any questions, like you just want to talk afterwards, like message me on LinkedIn or whatever, let me know. And then I'll allow Jerome to close us off with the 5 minutes we have left.
Great work, Aneta. No, you're right on time. I really like it. Yeah, no, you're good. We did have one question come in though. And the question is, how do you manage technically challenged coworkers when you're working remotely? So I don't know if you understand the question, but it's like if the internet connection breaks up, or people have a lot of noise in the background with kids or whatever, how do you manage those people who are technically challenged?
Oh, how do you manage technically challenged people while you're working remotely and it's bothering you, like it's like distracting you or something?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I would be honest. I would like book, you know, some time to maybe have like a coffee chat with the person and like talk to them a little bit, see how their days are going, maybe like get curious about their lives, like what's happening with their lives. Like if, for an example, they're highly stressed and they have like 3 kids running around and they're doing their very best, I mean, you can kind of lean into that and really understand them. And if you understand them and you show compassion for them, perhaps that technologically challenged pieces won't bother you as much, which is number one. And then the second piece, if it's kind of just like, if it's not in their scope of awareness, like they don't know that they're doing this and it's influencing people negatively, just being open to it and being like, this has been my experience, and just share, you know, I've been told this in the past as well, and I'm looking out for you. Let's maybe adjust it a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's great. There's also another interpretation of the question I just realized,
Okay.
because it could also mean technically challenged, like coworkers who are not that familiar with computers, not that familiar with Zoom, all that stuff, and you can't really help them because, like in the office, you would sit next to them and maybe explain it to them. Do you have any tips for that on how to help technically challenged in that sense coworkers to get on board quickly?
Yeah, so I think that's I think that's kind of around what I was trying to get at with like having a specific amount of time for IT to come in and have like a moment to just share with them what type of tools, how do we use these tools, what are some logins, just the basic foundations of being non-technically challenged. And just having that on the first day and like just asking if they have any questions would be a good start. And then the second piece, if it's still continuing on, the best way to make friends is to teach. So you can use this as your chance to teach somebody who maybe doesn't know as much about technology as you do, that you're fortunate enough to learn about, and just book a Zoom meeting with them and be like, hey, let me show you around here. And this will be like a really key moment for you and will help you build a relationship in the future. So try not to be distracted by the frustrations that are happening in the moment and try to think about long term. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice, actually. Nice. Thank you. That was it for the Q&A session this time.
Okay.
Just
Sorry
let me
for
share.
going over.
Oh no, you're good. I mean,
Okay.
you had a lot of things to share, and I think you made the most out of it. So that's really good.
Cool.
So yeah, with that being said, thank you very much for your second time giving this webinar. It's really nice to hear again. And there's still a lot of things in the flywheel that we could talk about. So if the audience loves to have a follow-up, please let us know as well. And then maybe we could hold a first session, who knows? With that being said, after you exit the webinar today, you will get a notification to fill in the survey. It would really help us to get some feedback on these sessions. What did you like? What did you not like? Was it too long? Was it too short? Would you like to have a follow-up? Just let us know, and then we can help Aneta and ourselves improve this session. And then, sadly enough, this was the last episode of the CEMS webinar series for this semester, this season. We'll take a short summer break, and then we'll be back in the fall again with new exciting speakers, corporate partners, alumni. So yeah, stay tuned for the summer, and then we'll hope to see you again in the fall period. But during the summer, if you want to hear more of the CEMS community, we still have the CEMS podcast, who is still going on in the summer. Every 2 weeks, you could hear a new episode made by the student board. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcast. And also we would like to remind you, if you're a CEMS alumni, that there's a CEMS alumni platform where you can sign up on. You can connect with CEMS alumni like Aneta, but also others, and find out what they're doing, and maybe get together or have a call and help build your network. So with that being said, thank you very much for joining today. And yeah, hope to see you again in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.